Hermeticism is at the forefront of his YouTube channel's content, information, and outlook, with Hermetic wisdom, philosophy, and theurgy being the driving force that makes what this content is on this channel. Amidst all this Hermetic content, one could speculate, where exactly does Hermeticism come from? Where is the origins of the Hermetic faith? Now, Hermeticism is typically attributed to the 300 BC, which is the Hellenistic period, and where Hellenized Egypt essentially created a syncretic figure that was betwixt two divinities. One, the Egyptian god Thoth, and the second being the Greek god Hermes. Amidst the syncretization between these two gods was a sage-like divinity called Hermes Trismegistus, or Hermes the Thrice Great in English. And within the next millennium, Hermes Trismegistus would then get three attributed scriptures to him that are the main scriptures of Hermeticism. These in chronological order being the Corpus Hermeticum, the Asclepius, and the Samaritine Table, or the Emerald Tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, not to be confused with the Emerald Tablet of Thoth the Atlantean, which is a New Age philosophy book. Now here's where things get a little bit tricky. The Corpus Hermeticum is said to have been compiled in the 1st to 3rd century Common Era, which means it would have been around 300 to 600 years after the Hellenistic period, where Hermeticism says to originate from. Is there any previous works or anything that's a little bit earlier than the 1st to 3rd century that could possibly give us a proto look or a deeper look into what Hermeticism's presence in the ancient world is? I think I might have a speculation on what it is. And today, the Iqwan Stahab, or the Brevin of Gold in English, is proud to present Proto-Hermeticism, a look into late antiquity Phoenician lore. I hope you guys enjoy the video, and I hope you guys are ready, because this video is quite a doozy and it might be a little bit of a stretch. So, without further ado, let's get started. The text we're going to be examining in this video, to better understand and to draw parallels to Proto-Hermeticism, is Phoenician History by Philo of Byblos. This text was most likely written in the end of the 1st century or the beginning of the 2nd century, as Philo of Byblos lived from 64 to 141 Common Era. But who exactly is Philo of Byblos? Before we can get into the content and the context of his book, we should at least know who the author is. So Philo of Byblos was a Phoenician grammarian, antiquarian, and writer from the city of Byblos, which is located in present-day Lebanon. He lived during the Roman Empire and wrote in Greek. He is best remembered for, you guessed it, his Phoenician history, or also called Phoenician Antiquities, which we'll get into later. Philo was interested in compiling and explaining Phoenician mythology in a rationalized, historical way, that is, interpreting the gods as ancient kings, heroes, or natural forces rather than as supernatural beings. This approach mirrors other Hellenistic attempts to harmonize local traditions with Greek philosophy and history. Beyond the Phoenician history, Philo is also known to have written lexicons of Greek dialects and other grammatical works, though these are lost, unfortunately. His importance lies less in his literary style and more in the way he preserves fragments of a very old Near Eastern religious tradition that would otherwise be almost completely unknown. His work sits at the strange crossroad of myth, history, and philology, part preservation, part reinterpretation, making him one of the key transmitters of Phoenician lore into the Greek and later Christian intellectual world. So yeah, you guys heard me right. Philo of Byblos had an influence not only on Hermetics, but early Christian history too. In fact, it is the circulation of a Christian historian, Eusebius of Caesarea, that actually has the fragments and the components of what became the rectification and the reinstatement of Philo of Byblos' work. If it weren't for Eusebius, this work by Philo of Byblos would be lost completely. So we do owe it to the Christian historians for giving us this text and recirculating it for us, and his Preparatio Evangelica, or the Preparing the World for the Gospel. And now we're going to get into the contents of Phoenician history by Philo of Byblos that basically could entail Proto-Hermeticism. So what is the plot of Phoenician history? The plot of Phoenician history is that Philo of Byblos claims to be translating the works of a 13th century BC Phoenician priest named Sanchuniathon. Sanchuniathon was from present-day Beirut in Lebanon, so he would have been Lebanese just like Philo of Byblos was. So this could possibly draw some lines onto where Philo of Byblos could have gotten Sanchuniathon from. Sanchuniathon could have very well been a mysterious and mythological figure that Philo of Byblos is claiming to get his genealogy from. However, I think that the contents within Phoenician history is very interesting regardless. So what is the specific passage that I'm hyping up talking about in the ancient times? Consider the following passage, and then I will give 3 points as to why I think it talks about Proto-Hermeticism. Okay, so here is the passage we're going to be reciting, but it's also in Eusebius' Preparatio Evangelica. From these were descended Amminus and Magus, who taught men to construct villages and tend flocks. By these men were begotten Mesur and Siddiq, that is, well-freed and just. So if this sounds familiar to any one of you guys, Siddiq in the Phoenician language is similar and is a cousin related to the word Siddiq in the Arabic language, which means just. Muslims will be familiar with this because it's a title given to the Caliph Abu Bakr Siddiq, or Abu Bakr the Just, or the Truthful. And they found the use of salt. From Misor descended Taurus, who invented the writings of the first letters. Him the Egyptians called Thor, the Alexandrians Thoith, and the Greeks Hermes. But from Siddiq descended Dioscuri and Kabiri, or Corybantes or Samothraces. These, he says, first built a ship complete, and Zeus, visiting the country of the south, gave all Egypt to the god Taurus, that it might be his kingdom. So what exactly does this entail? What is the meaning behind this passage? And most importantly, what are my 3 points that pertain to Proto-Hermeticism in this passage? So here are my 3 points that pertains to why I think Philo of Byblos' Phoenician cosmology is Proto-Hermeticism. First of all, we have Mesur and Siddiq finding the use of salt. If anyone is into Hermetic alchemy or mystical alchemy, you know that salt is the major component to the alchemical trio, salt, sulfur, and mercury. With salt being the baseline or the first step in the alchemical process, then mercury, and then sulfur. This being black as salt, white as mercury, and red as sulfur. Second, we have the identification of Taurus being Hermes. This is a really major component, as it basically draws a baseline stigmatization of the Greeks considering Taurus or Thoth to actually be a figure of Hermes in their pantheon. This also would kind of suggest that Taurus continued to live on to the Greeks as Hermes. This is a pretty major finding, but it's not as major as the last finding in this breakdown, and that is Zeus giving Egypt to Taurus and Hermes, or Hermes I should say. You see, this is a really major component because it might have very well been an allegory for the time of Philo of Byblos' existence, the late Antiquity, for the uprising of Hermeticism within the Egyptian region and area. Zeus could have very well been an allegory for Alexander the Great, because Alexander the Great had a patron deity of Zeus, Ammon. So Alexander the Great's conquest is what caused the Hellenistic period, and in the Hellenistic period causing an uprising of Hermeticism in Egypt could definitely have been Philo of Byblos trying to translate Egypt being given to Thoth by Zeus. But that's just my personal weird take on it. You guys obviously don't have to agree, but I think this is a really cool finding and a really cool take on Proto-Hermeticism and Proto-Information. Shout out to all the people in the Discord server who was able to give this information to me, and thank you guys so much for watching and supporting the channel. If you like what you watch, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And the Ikwan Astahab is proud to have all you guys as a student and a learner, just like we are, in our pursuit of knowledge, wisdom, and prosperity. Peace out, everybody.